Tonight, I will tell you a story of a hero who lived long ago. This is the story of a man who wore green and lived in the deep. Green Woods. Many people know his name today, but few people know how his journey truly began. Tonight, we will go back in time to a place called Sherwood Forest. The forest of Sherwood was a world of green. It was a very large forest, filled with old, tall oak trees. In the early morning, the forest was very quiet and very beautiful. The sun sent long, golden fingers of light through the thick leaves of the trees. The air was cool and fresh. It smelled of damp earth, green moss, and small wild flowers. In this place, there was no noise from the busy town. There was no sound of horses or shouting men. There was only the soft sound of a small river and the beautiful songs of birds high above in the branches. In the heart of this deep forest stood a man named Robin. Robin was a tall man, and he was very strong. He wore a simple tunic of forest green, and a hood covered his head. He moved through the trees as silently as a shadow. Even the deer did not hear him when he walked on the soft grass. Today, Robin was practicing with his favorite bow. It was a long, simple bow made of yew wood. To another man, it was just a piece of wood. But in Robin's hands, it was the best weapon in all of England. Robin stood very still. He looked at a thin tree far away. He reached back and took an arrow from his quiver. He placed the arrow on the string. He pulled the string back to his ear. He held his breath. He did not move a muscle. He was focused. He was calm. Then, he let the arrow fly. Thwack! The arrow flew fast through the air. It hit the center of the thin tree with a loud sound. Robin smiled, a small, tired smile. He was the best archer in the land. But he did not boast. Robin loved the forest of Sherwood. To him, the forest was his home. He knew every secret path. He knew every hidden cave. He knew where the water was sweet and where the berries were ripe. He sat down by the river and watched the clear water move over the gray stones. Robin was a man who liked peace. He liked the way the wind moved the tall grass. He liked the way the sunlight danced on the river. In the forest, Robin felt safe. In the forest, Robin felt free. But as the sun began to go down, the world began to change. The golden light turned to a dark orange. The birds stopped singing their happy songs. The forest became very, very still. It was too still. Robin stood up slowly. He looked toward the south, toward the town of Nottingham. Far away, he could see a thin line of black smoke rising into the evening sky. His heart felt heavy when he saw that smoke. Robin knew that outside of these green trees, the world was not peaceful. He knew that in the town of Nottingham, people were hungry. He knew that the leaders were not kind. He knew that life was becoming very hard for the poor families. He looked at his strong bow, and then he looked at the darkening sky. He felt a small spark of worry in his chest. Today the forest was very green and very beautiful. The river was calm and the trees were tall. But Robin did not know that this was the last day he would look at this world with a quiet heart. He did not know that his life as a peaceful man was ending. Everything was about to change. A great storm was coming. Not a storm of rain, but a storm of trouble. Suddenly, the silence of the forest was broken. Robin froze. He heard a branch break behind him. Snap. It was a small sound, but in the quiet forest, it was as loud as a shout. Someone was coming through the bushes. Someone was following him. Robin reached for another arrow. His heart beat faster. Who was in the woods at this hour to understand the man in the green hood? We must look back many years before he lived in the deep forest, long before Robin was an outlaw. He was just a young boy with a bright smile and a very small wooden bow. He did not live in a cold stone castle. He lived in a small, warm house with his father and mother. The house was filled with the smell of baking bread and the sound of wood burning in the fireplace. Those were happy days, filled with light and laughter. His father was a man with big, strong hands and a very kind, steady voice. He was a man of the earth, but he was also a master of the bow. Every afternoon, when the sun was low in the sky, they went to a large, open field behind their home. His father showed him how to stand straight and how to hold the wooden bow. Robin, his father said softly, the bow is not just a tool for hunting. The bow is a tool for focus. To hit your target, you must be calm. You must be steady. You must breathe with the wind. Young Robin practiced for hours and hours every single day. Sometimes his small fingers were sore from the string. Sometimes his arms were very tired and heavy. But he did not stop. He watched the target. He breathed slowly, just like his father taught him. Soon, he could hit a small red apple from a very long distance. When the arrow hit the center, his father clapped his strong hands and laughed with great joy. Well done, my son, he would say. You have the eye of an eagle. But his father taught him much more than how to shoot an arrow. One cold winter evening, while they sat by the warm yellow fire, his father looked at Robin very seriously. Robin, always look at those who have less than we do, he said. A man is not rich because he has bags of gold. A man is truly rich because he helps his neighbor when they are in need. Robin listened to these words very carefully. He kept them deep inside his heart, like a secret treasure. In those days, Robin believed the world was a fair and good place. He believed that if you were a good person, life would always be good to you. He grew up to be a tall and fast young man. He was very proud of his small village and his family. He walked with his head held high, and he always had a kind word for the people he met on the road. However, as Robin became a man, a dark shadow began to fall over the land of England. The old, good king went away to a far land across the sea, and a new leader came to power. This leader was the Sheriff of Nottingham. The sheriff did not care about the lessons Robin's father taught. He did not care about helping his neighbors. He only cared about power, and he only cared about gold. Robin did not know it yet, but the peace of his happy childhood was ending. The lessons of kindness and the skill with the bow would soon be tested by a very cruel reality. He was about to learn that sometimes, to do what is right, you must stand up against those who are wrong. The young boy with the wooden bow was about to become a man with a dangerous mission. As the moon rose over his small house, Robin looked at his father's old bow on the wall. He felt a change in the air. The world was no longer simple, and the quiet life he loved was slipping away like water through his fingers. One morning, Robin decided to leave the quiet green world of the forest and walk into the town of Nottingham. He wanted to buy some fresh bread and see the faces of the people. But as he walked through the heavy stone gates, the town did not feel the same as when he was a small boy. The streets were dirty and gray. The people did not smile or laugh. They looked at the ground as they walked, their faces filled with worry and sadness. Robin stood near the busy market and watched the scene. Soon, he heard the sound of heavy boots on the stone street. A group of soldiers arrived. They wore shiny metal armor and carried long, sharp spears. In the middle of the soldiers was a man sitting on a large black horse. He wore expensive silk clothes and a heavy gold chain around his neck. This man was the Sheriff of Nottingham. The soldiers stopped in front of a very small, old house. A woman came out of the door. She looked very tired, and her clothes were thin and torn. She was a mother with 3 small children hiding behind her. "Tax money!" a soldier shouted in a loud, mean voice. "The sheriff wants his gold now." The woman began to cry softly. She held her hands out. "Please, sir," she said with a shaking voice, "I have no gold coins. My children have no food to eat. We only have a little bit of dry bread for the week." The sheriff did not look at her crying face. He did not care about her hungry children. "Take her only cow," he said in a voice as cold as ice. "If she has no gold, she must pay with what she has." Robin felt a hot fire of anger in his heart. He remembered his father's kind voice from many years ago. His father had said, "A man is truly rich because he helps his neighbor." Robin looked at the heavy bags of gold hanging from the sheriff's horse. And then he looked at the woman's empty, shaking hands. It was not fair. The rich were getting richer by stealing from the poor who were dying of hunger. Robin wanted to shout. He wanted to stop the soldiers. But he was only one man against many spears. He watched with a heavy heart as the soldiers led the woman's only cow away. The village became very silent, except for the sound of the woman crying in the street. Robin turned and walked back toward the deep forest. But his mind was not at peace. He could still hear the woman's sad voice in his ears. He could still see the sheriff's cruel, cold eyes. He realized that the law was not helping the people anymore. The law was being used to hurt them. That night, as the silver moon rose over the tall oak trees, Robin sat by his small fire. He knew he could not go back to his old, quiet life. A big problem was growing in the land of Nottingham, and a crack had appeared in the world that could not be fixed with words. He knew that something had to change, and that change had to start with him. The sun went down, but Robin did not sleep. He sat under the old tree and watched the stars. The forest was very dark and very quiet, but his mind was loud with many questions. He thought about the woman in the town and her crying children. He thought about his father's kind face and the cold, hard eyes of the sheriff. Why Robin asked the wind? Why do the powerful take from those who have nothing? He knew that if he stayed in his house, he would be safe. He could hunt for food and live a quiet life. But he also knew that he could not live this way anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the sheriff's gold. That gold belonged to the people of the village. It belonged to the mothers who had no bread and the fathers who worked in the rain. Robin stood up and walked to the river. He looked at his reflection in the water. He was not a soldier. And he was not a king. He was just a man with a bow. But a man with a bow can be very dangerous if he has a purpose. He realized that someone had to stand against the sheriff. Someone had to become a shadow in the night to bring light back to the poor. It was a scary thought. If he did this, the law would hunt him. He would never be able to go home again. He would be an outlaw. He felt a deep chill in his heart. But then he felt a new kind of strength. He was not just Robin anymore. He would be the voice for those who could not speak. He would take the gold back. In the middle of the night, Robin made a promise to the forest and to the moon. He picked up his green hood and pulled it over his head. He looked toward the castle one last time. He was not afraid of the dark anymore. He turned away from his old life and walked deeper into the trees. A secret decision was made, and the world would never be the same again. The time for thinking was finally over. Robin stood at the edge of the forest and looked back at his small, quiet house for the very last time. The morning sun was rising, but it did not feel warm or welcoming to him today. He was leaving his comfortable bed, his green garden, and his safety. He was stepping into a new world where the law would hunt him like a wild animal. He felt a cold shiver of fear in his chest. But he also felt a strange, new spark of excitement. He was no longer just a simple villager. He was a man with a dangerous mission. He pulled his green hood low over his face and walked into the thick, dark trees of Sherwood. He was leaving his old life behind forever. The forest was different now. It was not just a place to practice with his bow. It was his fortress and his protector. He walked for many miles, crossing cold, rushing streams and climbing over large gray rocks. He looked for a secret place where no soldier could ever find him. Finally, he found a hidden cave behind a heavy curtain of green vines. This would be his new home, deep in the heart of the woods. Robin sat in the quiet cave and listened. He heard the wind moving through the high branches of the oak trees. He heard the dry leaves dancing on the ground. He was alone. But he did not feel lonely. He felt the spirit of the forest all around him like a warm blanket. He began to learn the secret language of the woods. He learned which bird sound meant danger was near, and which hidden path led to fresh, sweet water. He knew that the sheriff's men were already looking for him in the villages. They called him a thief and a criminal. But Robin knew the truth in his heart. He was the one who would bring balance and justice back to the world. Every day, he practiced with his bow until his arms felt as strong as iron. He was preparing for a war that had no soldiers in shiny armor, only shadows in the trees. As the first stars appeared in the dark sky, Robin felt a deep sense of hope. He was an outlaw now, a man without a home or a name. But for the first time in his life, he felt truly free. He was ready to face whatever challenges the forest had for him. But the forest was very large, and Robin was still only one man. He did not know that very soon. He would meet someone who would challenge his strength on a very small wooden bridge. Robin continued his journey deeper into the green world of Sherwood. One afternoon, he came to a very small, narrow wooden bridge over a fast, cold river. The water was rushing loudly over the gray stones below. At the same moment, a very tall man stepped onto the other side of the bridge. This man was a giant. He was nearly 7 feet tall, with arms as thick as tree branches and a friendly but strong face. Robin looked at the giant, and the giant looked at Robin. Neither man wanted to move back. "Move aside, my friend," Robin said with a small smile. "I am in a hurry, and this bridge is too small for 2 people." The giant laughed. His voice was like deep thunder in the quiet woods. "The bridge is indeed small, little man, but I was here first. You move aside from me, or you will taste the cold water." Robin looked at his bow, but he knew that using an arrow would not be fair against a man with only a wooden staff. Instead, Robin picked up a long, heavy wooden stick from the ground. The giant also held a large, thick staff in his hands. They met in the middle of the narrow bridge. Crack! The wooden sticks hit each other again and again. Robin was fast and light on his feet, moving like a leaf in the wind. But the giant was very, very strong. They fought for a long time, sweat falling from their faces into the river. Robin hit the giant many times, but the giant did not fall. Suddenly, the giant saw an opening. He hit Robin's stick with great force. Splash Robin fell backward into the cold, rushing water. The giant stood on the bridge and laughed loudly at the sight. Robin climbed out of the river, soaking wet and shaking his head. He was not angry or mean. He began to laugh, too, because he knew he had met his match. "You are a brave and strong man," Robin said, wiping the cold water from his eyes. "You are the first person to push me into the river. What is your name?" "Giant. My name is John Little," the giant replied, reaching out a huge, strong hand to help Robin up from the mud. Robin looked at the huge man and smiled. "John Little. That is a funny name for such a big man. From now on, we will call you Little John. Will you join me in the forest? We are fighting for the poor and the hungry." Little John looked into Robin's eyes and saw the truth and the kindness there. He nodded his head slowly. Robin had found his first true friend and companion. He also learned an important lesson that day. Even the best archer can fall into the river if he is too proud. The 2 men walked into the deep trees together. They did not know that many more people were watching them from the shadows, waiting for a leader to follow. Soon, they were not alone in the green darkness. Other men began to come to the forest from the small villages. These were men who had lost their homes to the sheriff's soldiers. These were men who were hungry and tired of the sheriff's cruelty. They all wore green tunics to hide in the leaves, and the people began to call them the Merry Men. Robin sat with them by the warm campfire at night. He looked at their faces. Some were young boys and some were old men, but they all had a new hope in their eyes. Robin taught them how to use the bow and how to move through the woods without making a single sound. We do not rob for ourselves. Robin told them clearly, we take from the rich who steal from the poor, and we give to those who suffer. The group grew larger every day as more people heard the stories of the man in the green hood. They became a family in the heart of the woods, sharing their food and their stories. But as the merry men became stronger, the Sheriff of Nottingham became angrier. He sat in his cold stone castle and shouted at his soldiers. "Find him," the sheriff screamed, his voice echoing in the halls. "I want the head of Robin Hood." The sheriff put wanted posters on every oak tree and every stone wall in the town. He sent more soldiers into the deep forest. But the woods were dark and full of secrets. Robin's men knew every hidden path and every hollow tree, while the soldiers were afraid of the shadows. However, the pressure from the castle was increasing every day. The sheriff was closing the main roads and stopping food from reaching the small villages. Ung wanted to starve the people until they told him where Robin was hiding. He was using the people's hunger as a weapon against Robin. Robin felt the heavy weight of this new danger on his shoulders. He knew that hiding in the caves was no longer enough to help his friends. The forest was full of soldiers now, and the air felt heavy with the coming storm. Robin looked at his bow and realized that a great test was waiting for him in the town of Nottingham. The Sheriff of Nottingham was a very angry man, but he was also a very clever man. He knew that Robin Hood was a proud archer. So, the sheriff created a plan to catch him. He did not use his soldiers to hunt in the woods this time. Instead, he used a trap made of gold. The sheriff announced a great contest in the center of the town square. The best archer in all of England will win a prize, the sheriff said. With a dark, thin smile, the prize is an arrow made of pure, shining gold. He sent his messengers to every village to tell the news. He knew that Robin Hood would hear about it, and that Robin would not be able to stay away. Robin did hear the news in the deep green forest. His men were very worried. "It is a trap." "Robin," Little John said, his big voice heavy with concern. "The town of Nottingham is full of soldiers today. They are waiting for a man in a green hood to walk through the gates. Please, do not go." But Robin only smiled his quiet, confident smile. He loved a challenge, and he wanted to show the people that the sheriff could not win every time. "I will go to the contest," Robin said to his men, "but I will not go as Robin Hood. I will go as a stranger." On the day of the contest, the town square was crowded with many people. There were many archers wearing bright red, blue, and yellow tunics. Among them was an old man in a tattered, brown cloak. His face was hidden by a dirty hood, and he looked poor and weak. The sheriff sat on his high, wooden chair, looking carefully at every man. He was looking for a man in a green hood, but he saw no one. The contest began under the hot afternoon sun. One by one, the archers stepped forward and shot their arrows. Many arrows hit the target, But only 2 men remained at the end, a tall, strong soldier, and the old man in the brown cloak. The soldier shot his arrow first. It flew straight and hit very close to the center of the target. The soldiers in the crowd cheered loudly. Then, the old man in the brown cloak stepped forward. The square became very, very quiet. He breathed slowly and pulled back his old bowstring. Whiz! The arrow flew through the air like a bird. It hit the soldier's arrow and split it into 2 pieces. It was a perfect shot. The crowd went wild with joy. They shouted and clapped their hands. The sheriff was silent, and his face was red with anger. He handed the golden arrow to the old man. But as the old man took the prize, he leaned close to the sheriff and whispered, "The birds in Sherwood are still singing." Before the soldiers could move, the old man disappeared into the large crowd. By the time the sheriff realized it was Robin Hood, the hero was already back under the green leaves of the forest. He held the golden arrow high for all his merry men to see. It was a great victory. And for a moment, the forest was full of laughter and light. But Robin did not know that the sheriff's anger was now a burning fire. That night, the sky turned a heavy, dark, gray, and a cold rain began to fall through the thick leaves. The merry men sat close to their fires. But the wood was damp, and the flames were weak and flickering. Robin felt a strange, cold chill in his bones that had nothing to do with the rain. "Where is Little John?" he asked, looking around the quiet camp. No one answered him. His best friend had gone to the edge of the woods to watch the main road. But the hours had passed, and he had not returned. Suddenly, a young man ran into the camp. Splashing through the mud, he was shaking with fear, and his face was very pale. "Robin!" he cried, his voice breaking. "The soldiers. They knew exactly where we were hiding. They have captured Little John. He is in heavy iron chains." Robin's heart dropped like a stone. He realized in that moment that there was a traitor among them. Robin stood alone in the pouring rain, his green clothes soaking wet and heavy. He felt a terrible weight on his shoulders that he could not lift. "It is my fault," Robin whispered to the dark trees. "I was too proud of my golden arrow. I was playing a game. And now my brother is in a dark, cold cell because of me." For the first time since he entered the woods, Robin felt completely alone. He looked at his famous bow, but it felt heavy and useless in his hands. He sat on a cold, wet rock and put his head in his hands. He felt a deep failure in his soul. And for a moment, he wanted to give up and run away. The wind howled through the high branches, sounding like a person crying in the night. It was the darkest night of his soul, and he could see no way out. But even in the deepest dark, a small light was about to appear. Someone was walking through the thick mud toward Robin, and they were not wearing a green hood. The sound of footsteps in the mud grew louder, but Robin did not look up. He felt defeated. Then, a soft, warm hand touched his shaking shoulder. Robin looked up and saw Maid Marian. She had traveled through the dangerous night, through the dark trees and the heavy rain, just to find him. Her face was tired, but her eyes were filled with a light that Robin had forgotten. "Robin," she said, her voice steady and warm like a summer breeze. "Why are you sitting here in the dark? Why are you letting the rain wash away your heart?" Robin looked at her. His eyes filled with a deep, sharp pain. "Little John is gone. Marian, the sheriff has won. He has my best friend. He has his gold. And he has his soldiers. I am just a man with a broken heart and a wet bow. I have failed everyone." Marian shook her head slowly. She reached into her cloak and gave him a small piece of dry bread and a cup of clean water. "No, Robin, you are wrong. You are more than just a man to the people of Nottingham. You are a hope. You are the light they see when their lives are dark. If you give up now, the sheriff does not just take little John. He takes the spirit of every poor family in this land. Eat this bread. Drink this water. And then, Robin, remember who you are. Remember why you first picked up that bow in the field with your father." As Robin ate the bread, he began to think. He thought about the woman's cow that was stolen. He thought about the laughter of the merry men around the campfire. He thought about the golden arrow and the way the people cheered when the sheriff lost. A new fire began to burn deep in his chest. He realized that his strength did not come from his bow or how fast he could shoot an arrow. His true strength came from the people who believed in him. Robin stood up slowly. He was no longer shaking from the cold rain. He pulled his green hood back and looked at the merry men who were watching him from the shadows of the trees. "Listen to me," Robin shouted, his voice ringing through the tall oaks like a bell. "The sheriff thinks we are beaten. He thinks the rain has washed away our courage." Listening to his every word. But he is wrong. Robin's eyes were bright with a new power. "Tonight, we do not hide in our caves. Tonight, we do not fear the soldiers. Tonight, we go to Nottingham. We are going to bring our brother home." A low, powerful cheer grew among the men. Robin picked up his bow. It no longer felt heavy. It felt light and ready, like it was a part of his own arm. He knelt on the muddy ground and began to draw a map in the dirt with a small stick. "Here is the castle," he said, pointing to a circle in the mud. "And here is the secret gate. We will move like the wind." The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air in Nottingham thick with the smell of wet stone, wood smoke, and fear. Robin and his merry men moved through the dark. Narrow streets, like green ghosts in the night. They did not use the main wooden gates of the city. Instead, they used long, strong ropes to climb the high stone walls of the castle. Inside the great hall of the castle, the Sheriff of Nottingham was celebrating his victory. He sat at a large wooden table filled with roasted meat and expensive wine. In the dark corner of the room, little John was chained to a cold stone pillar, his head hanging low in sadness. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors burst open with a loud crash. Sheriff Robin shouted. His voice was like a sudden crack of lightning in the silence. "It's sign." The soldiers jumped up from their seats, reaching for their sharp swords. But Robin's men were faster. Arrows flew through the smoky air, hitting the torches on the stone walls one by one. The room went dark, lit only by the orange glow of the large fireplace. In the confusion, Robin ran toward the corner. With one powerful, heavy strike of his sword, he broke the iron chains. "Go, John, lead the men out," Robin commanded in a strong voice. But the sheriff was not running away. He pulled out a long, wicked sword and stepped toward Robin. "You are a fool, Robin Hood," the sheriff hissed with a mean smile. "You come into my house only to die." The two men began to fight in the center of the great hall. The sound of steel hitting steel was loud and sharp. Clang, clang, clang. The sheriff swung his sword in a wide, dangerous circle. But Robin dropped to his knees and rolled behind a large wooden table. He stood up quickly, pulled a white arrow from his back, and aimed. The sheriff laughed loudly. "An arrow cannot save you now, little archer." But Robin did not aim at the sheriff's heart. He aimed at the heavy rope holding the giant iron chandelier above the sheriff's head. Whiz! The arrow cut the rope perfectly, with a terrible, crashing sound. The iron and the burning candles fell to the floor, trapping the sheriff in a circle of bright fire. "The forest has come to the castle," Robin said quietly as he looked at his enemy. The soldiers saw their leader defeated and trapped. They dropped their heavy weapons and held up their hands. Robin and his men took the sheriff's large bags of stolen gold and ran back into the night, leaving the burning castle behind them. As Robin looked back, he saw the first light of dawn beginning to break over the green hills of England. The sun began to rise slowly over the tall stone walls of Nottingham. The heavy, black smoke from the castle fire moved quietly into the clear blue sky. For the first time in many years, the heavy iron gates of the city were wide open. Robin and his merry men stood on a green hill nearby, watching the golden light touch the small houses below. In the town, the people started to come out of their homes one by one. They did not look at the ground with fear anymore. There, sitting on the cold stones, were the large bags of gold that Robin had taken back from the sheriff. A young mother walked to a bag, picked up a shiny gold coin, and began to cry. But these were not the sad tears of a hungry woman. These were tears of pure joy. The sheriff was no longer a powerful leader. He sat in a dark, cold corner of his ruined hall. He had no silk clothes and no gold chains. Soon, the news traveled across the land. The good king had finally returned from his long journey across the sea. A man who fights for the hungry is a true friend to the crown. The king declared to his court. He sent a royal messenger into the deep woods of Sherwood with a very important paper. The king gave Robin Hood and all of his merry men a full pardon. Robin felt a strange and wonderful peace in his heart. He looked at Little John, who was standing beside him, breathing the fresh morning air with a big smile. The forest of Sherwood was no longer a place where they had to hide in fear. The birds were singing their happy songs again, and the river ran clear and bright over the stones. Many years passed, and the green leaves of Sherwood Forest turned to gold and fell to the earth many times. Robin Hood was no longer the young, fast archer running through the dark shadows. but his heart was still as strong and steady as an old oak tree. One quiet afternoon, he sat by the same rushing river where he had first met Little John. He watched the clear water flow peacefully toward the distant sea. He looked at his old bow, resting against the rough bark of a tree. The wood was worn and smooth from many years of use. As he sat there, he thought about all the people he had helped over the years. He remembered the mothers who now had warm bread for their children and the small boys who could now go to school. Robin realized a very important truth that day. His real legacy was the hope he had planted in the hearts of the people. A story never really ends. Robin whispered to the soft wind. He knew that even when he was gone, people would sit by their warm fires at night and tell the tale of the man in the green hood. As the sun began to set behind the purple hills, painting the sky in beautiful colors of fire and violet, Robin Hood smiled. He knew that the spirit of Sherwood, the spirit of freedom and justice, would live forever in the hearts of men. He closed his eyes and listened to the forest one last time. The birds were singing a final song of peace. The river was humming a quiet tune, and the world was finally at rest. This final section brings our 60-minute journey to a close. We have traveled from the quiet, sunlit paths of Sherwood Forest to the dark, stone halls of Nottingham Castle. We began our story in the peaceful silence of Sherwood Forest, where Robin lived a life of simple joy. Robin chose to become an outlaw. In the deep woods, he met the giant Little John on a narrow wooden bridge. Together, they built a new family called the Merry Men. They won small victories, like the Golden Arrow contest. In his darkest moment, Robin found new strength through the wise words of Maid Marian. He led a great, final battle at the castle, defeated the sheriff in a circle of fire, and saw the good king return. The story of Robin Hood teaches us a very important lesson. True wealth is not found in bags of gold, but in how we help our neighbors. As you finish this 60-minute practice, try to remember these 3 important words: justice, outlaw, and legacy. Thank you for spending this hour with me in the world of legends. If you enjoyed the legend of Robin Hood, please click the like button and subscribe to Audiobook English Stories. Before you go, leave a comment below. If you lived in Sherwood Forest, what would be your special skill? Sleep well. Keep practicing your English every day. And always remember to be kind to those around you. Good night, and well done.